to everyone. Welcome to a new podcast and falling into the arms of God. In meditations with Saint Teresa of Avila. This is your pastor, Yeti. I think a lot of you out there will probably know Teresa of Avila. Maybe some don't. She's pretty much related in the knowing of as she became a saint through the Catholic Church. This woman made a big difference in her time and still as of today. How you can awaken, how your soul can go in certain levels, in so many different understandings and growing. For some new, for some maybe already know, but let us listen what we can learn from a person who had a very strong conversion. To Jesus. Within oneself, very clearly, is the best place to look. I would say for God. And it's not necessary to go to heaven, nor any further than our own selves. For to do so is to tire the spirit and distract the soul, without gaining as much fruit. Teresa of Avila understood that the mystery of the divine dwelling was available to all people. For her contemplation was not restricted to nuns and monks. Likewise, she believed that engaging in an active life was not confined to those living in the secular world. Teresa's life provides us with an exceptional example of bringing the contemplative and active life together. It displays both a profound internal depth and an exceptionally productive outcome. Of both Jewish and Christian ancestry, Teresa de Ayumeda was born in Avila, Spain, in 1515, where she had a privileged upbringing and belonged to the Spanish nobility. Societal status was extremely important in 16th century Spain, and Teresa's life was deeply affected by social expectations. She was also greatly influenced, however, by the religious ethos within her family, and consequently a certain dichotomous relationship was firmly established in Teresa's psyche. This dichotomy or dichotomy was the plague Teresa for many years to come. At the age of 20, after much deliberation, she chose to enter the Carmelite monastery in Avila. She did not make this choice because of a vocational calling, but because Teresa understood it was to be a favorable alternative to marriage. Likewise, her choice of religious order was not owing to any spiritual affiliation, but simply made because a friend of hers had recently entered the order, and she thought it would be fun to be there together. I hope you're open for all you're gonna hear through all the sessions to come. It will be very important as we open our mind and ears and heart to receive that in the time of 1515 a woman came out and changed so many things that for women at least another chapter could start it. But fascinating was the world continued while she lived in the monastery, since it was not an enclosed order, and a stream of visitors occupied much of her time as they relate to the latest gossip, fashions, and news of the town. Prayers were ordered and recited by Rod, which left her soul dry and uninspired. She attempted to enter her own prayer of quiet, but finding the thoughts in her head far too noisy and disturbing, she gave up any attempt to develop a more meaningful way to pray. Her relationship with God at this time was fairly superficial. For 20 years, she lived a divided life. On the one hand, her ego desired worldly attachments, while on the other, her spirit was calling her to a deeper communion with God. At the age of 40, Teresa finally surrendered completely to God. Her real life and work had begun. She returned to her prayer of quiet, allowing God to lead her, no longer relying on her own techniques. Meditation became essential to Teresa in establishing a clear and firm foundation with God. And as she walked further on her spiritual pathway, she came to understand that this external God also rests within. It was to this place that she would constantly return to receive guidance, love, and a feeling of deep peace that she could not find elsewhere. In 1560, Teresa was guided to reform the Carmelite order, both male and female. She chose John of the Cross, 1542 and 1591, to become the first friar. John had studied with the Jesuits and had a promising academic career. But he unexpectedly entered the contemplative Carmelite order. He was to become a great Spanish mystic and saint. Teresa introduced him to her teachings of returning to the essence of the Hermit Fathers from Mount Carmel in Israel, that is, of becoming a garden of contemplation. She encountered numerous objections and hostilities, both from within and outside the order, and was thrown into fear and self-doubt. Teresa battled with this self-doubt for many years, but with continued faith in her inner God self, she fought long and hard against the many male clerics who ceaselessly try to invalidate her spiritual experiences. Through this, she became an advocate for inner self-guidance. Teresa created 17 new monasteries altogether, traveling the length and breadth of Spain in often appalling conditions, encountering treacherous floods and heavy snowfalls, often housed in roadside inns with all kinds of valiants and vermin. When asked what hell was like, Teresa quickly replied, "Hell is like a night in a bad hotel." Through founding these monasteries, Teresa became an astute businesswoman. She raised funds to purchase properties, was conversant with tax laws, and even knew how to legally evade certain land taxes. Her diplomatic and bureaucratic skills were constantly called on as she dealt with nobility and local government officials. On one occasion, she even had to ask the King of Spain for a personal favor. She was, as we would say today, a very modern woman. Teresa has given us numerous volumes of writings in which she describes a profoundly rich inner life. Her masterwork, The Interior Castle, one of the most celebrated books on mystical theology ever written, is a detailed guide for the journey towards spiritual perfection. In this work, she likened the soul to a crystal castle within which are 7 dwelling places. Each dwelling place has many rooms and represents certain aspects of the spiritual journey. In each of these there are many others, below and above, and to the sides, with lovely gardens and fountains and labyrinths, such delightful things that you would want to be dissolved in praises of the great God, who created the soul in his own image and likeness. She knew the beauty and wonder of her own soul and tirelessly instructed those in her monasteries and surrounding communities. She taught them how to enter deeply into this great mystery, ultimately leading to the center of the castle, the place where God resides. We will work with reflective interpretations relevant to our 21st century psychology and spirituality of the interior castle and its 7 dwellings. Teresa did not name the dwellings, and so I have given them titles suggested by her writing and according to the interpretation of the journey we embark on as we enter each dwelling place. As we travel with Teresa deeper into the center of our being, the spiritual journey becomes at once more demanding and more sublime. Throughout her work, Teresa wrote mainly about the nature of the soul. Only briefly did she delineate between the soul and spirit. Writing late in life, she noted that as her daily duties continued, she felt a part of herself always remaining in the divine center, while the soul and all its faculties attended to the necessary business. She believed that it is the spirit that is one with God, even though, paradoxically, there is no separation between soul and spirit. She quoted Paul, "He that is joined are united to the Lord, becomes one spirit with him." Her philosophical musings were short, however, since she was far more concerned with the practical applications of her experiences, and she ends a brief foray into these thoughts by claiming the complex subtlety of our interior workings. In keeping with Teresa's use of it, the word soul then is to be read as defining the whole being. Teresa often lamented over the inaptitude of language when trying to describe the divine and her experiences, even though she was naturally influenced by the language of her day. Her writings clearly indicate that her knowledge of the supreme reality went far beyond the linguistic limitations we are all faced with. In keeping with the tradition of Teresa's time and her writings, I have referred to God as He. Well, please, for yourself, use the name of God as whatever is comfortable for yourself, whether it be spirit, universe, higher power, or energy, or Adonai, or whatever you want to fill in. Teresa did not use the word ego, but referred to her mind, will, and pride as creating havoc in her life through self-serving impulses, such as personal demands and desires, fears and worries, and self-righteousness. And nonetheless, throughout what we're going to do in our podcast, use the terms ego and the smaller ego self when referring to such impulses. Both Teresa's and our own, since they captured well her meaning and since modern readers can easily relate to these concepts. Teresa passed from this world on October 15, 1582, at the age of 68. Her body was said to give off the perfume of roses, and it did not decompose. She was canonized as a saint on March 12, 1622. Teresa had no time for a disembodied spirituality, and she would frequently say, "God preserves me from saintly people." She displayed much courage, heart, and humor, and was able to balance an active and keen intellect with the surrender of the self to God. This is why I feel that she has much to teach us. Being principally a people driven by our thinking minds, we can appreciate and learn from her balanced life of surrender. We can enter into her own innate relationship with God, while simultaneously using and cultivating our intellects to further our work here and on earth, whether that is destined to be. So, we're going to go to our first session and the first dwelling. May your heart have a prayer attitude as you listen, and further on when you're going to listen again and work with it in your meditation time. The awakening. For often when a person is distracted and forgetful of God, His Majesty will awaken it. We are constantly being given opportunities to reawaken, that is, to remember who we are, divine children of God. Teresa reminded us that this awakening occurs throughout our lifetimes and is not a once or twice only opportunity. Rather, it occurs every day in our lives. These awakenings come as moments alone or with others, and they are divine offerings from God. In this dwelling, we are introduced to that other reality of our being, the ever-present mystical self. We are asked to look beyond the superficiality of our existence and to take notice of what lies deep within. Teresa wrote about the spiritual knowing of our childhood and about how so many of us become disengaged from it. She calls us back to our divine origins, to the great mystery and beauty of our souls. The mystical reality. O children of the earth, how long will you be hard of heart? These words were spoken to Teresa by God when she was questioning the authenticity of her mystical experiences. In probing the nature of reality, we tend to gravitate toward the theory that a common experience should dictate our own. After all, this is what the majority of people are living and experiencing, therefore it must be true. But what of the rare mystical experience? The validity of such an encounter needs to be recognized for what it is, a divine gift of love which expands the human soul, enabling it to comprehend a great reality. We are all mystics slowly awakening to the reality of who we really are. And that is, we are the children of heaven and earth, of spirit and matter, who are blessed both with heavenly and earthly experiences. God does not know the differences between these worlds, and we are all being given the opportunity to enter into this unity, if only we will soften our hearts and seize to question God's infinite ways. The way of the mystic is a pathway to experiencing these ways of infinity, a pathway open to all. Teresa describes one of her experiences as a fire being unkindled in her heart, coming, she said, from God's true love. She knew that this was not of her own doing, as she felt it consuming her and burning away all pains and miseries. With her soul emerging transformed like a phoenix rising from the ashes, her soul possessed a fresh purity, and she began walking on the pathway again with new vision. Even so, she questioned its reality. Like Teresa, we too often doubt our experiences that brings us into a mystical closeness with our own souls and with God. The soul contains a complex array of all our faculties, including memories, rational thoughts, and intuitive and psychic abilities. To have all these faculties come into alignment on an issue is often a very difficult task. For many, the rational mind is dominant, and subsequently it governs the process of interpretation and belief. For a few, the intuitive and psychic faculties are well developed, and so their belief system has been constructed accordingly. Most people do not experience a balance among all these faculties. The universal paradigm of the mystic, however, is one of unity, encompassing all faculties and realities, both inner and outer. How do we experience this unification that the true mystic experiences? Through surrendering to the Spirit, wrote Teresa. The Spirit of God, which is our very spirit, lays all the faculties of the soul to rest in a unified existence of peace and love, and in doing so, allows the transformation of the soul to occur. Herein lies the true nature of the mystic, a unity of being known through a spiritual metaphorism. A metamorphosis. Further, the word mystic derives from the Latin mysterium, which means to be altered. In times we will come to know our mystical experiences to be as valid as any other experiences in our life. We will no longer think of them as rare occurrences for a select few, but as a natural way of life for us all. Now, if you have time, find a quiet, reflective space for your meditation. Follow the rhythm of your breath. Breathe deeper and deeper into yourself. Allow thoughts and feelings to float by. Bring yourself before the Spirit of God and lay your soul down. Immerse yourself in the calm peace and love. Allow your soul to be transformed. Allow yourself to be. May you find peace within as we walk together to these meditation sessions. May you allow yourself to open yourself to God. And may God bless you. This is your Pastor Yeti. Bye-bye.